I was just saying to a client this morning, a lot of the time we create our own suffering. And this is why social media can be destructive. Because we're scrolling, it's so easy to forget that it is a highlight reel. I see everyone else has it all together. They know what they're doing. They know exactly how to navigate their lives, and everything's perfect for them. It must only be me. And because mental health, the depression, anxiety, these were all taboo topics not long ago. And now speaking about it, I thought, listen, if I speak about it and it encourages one person to just reach out for help or say to someone, I'm not doing so well, then I've done my job.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. And today I'm joined by someone very, very interesting. You will have definitely seen her on TikTok, on Instagram. I'm joined today by Millie, a CBT practitioner and just an all-round guru when it comes to mindset and mental health, really. The TikTok videos that I've seen and the Instagram videos that I've seen have just been really, really cool. So I'm really looking forward to picking your brain today, Amy, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So I found you probably 12 months ago now, I would say.
Yeah.
Around about
TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok. And the videos, for anyone that hasn't seen her videos, Amy has this incredible catchphrase that she starts most of her, if not all of her videos with. And it goes, I'm going to do it no justice because I don't have the voice for it, but it goes, "Hi, baby." And then it insert really important information. And I just really loved the premise of that. So what I want to ask you really is, TikTok at that time was a place where people were dancing around, they were doing funny videos. It wasn't really a platform for informative information. So how did you get into TikTok? And then all of a sudden, where did you spot this hole that you just filled?
It's an interesting question because you're right. At the time, TikTok was all about like lip syncing and dances and everyone joking and dancing around. And then I came across this one girl, I can't remember her name now, and she was speaking very openly about her mental health and how the algorithm works. Once you watch one video like it, it will start sending you more videos that is related to what you like. So it will start sending me more videos about people and relating to mental health and their struggles. And I saw people being really open and authentic about what was going on for them. Social media a lot of the time is used as a form of escapism, right? We'll get on TikTok, we'll scroll, like forget about my problems for a while. But I found it really soothing to watch people just being really open, real, and authentic, because you don't find that on Instagram. Well, I didn't find that on Instagram. And so I was like, this is actually kind of amazing. I was struggling a lot with my mental health at the time. And so eventually I built up the courage to speak about what was going on for me. And I'm not really sure how, I started off by making a few jokes about it, which is how I dealt with it at the time. Just like, let's joke about my mental health, which wasn't funny. But, gaining a following allowed me to be more authentic. It made me feel actually safe to be myself, gaining that support from amazing, like strangers across the world. It was heartwarming, and it's been such an amazing experience from them.
I think so it was lockdown for me. It was right in the middle of lockdown, and I'll be honest, like I'd kind of, being an online coach, like social media is a massive part of my work, and I was so hesitant to get involved with TikTok I have such a love-hate relationship with social media for the reasons that, you know, you've said, like Instagram, it can be an incredible place, it can be an empowering place, but it also can be a terrible place depending on how you use it, what your mindset is, if you forget it's a highlight reel, those sorts of things. And I remember downloading it, and I just spent hours, like genuinely, because it was lockdown, we were doing nothing. And I remember I was scrolling for about an hour and I didn't even realize. And I literally had been like, I was like, I'm going to have to delete this app.
Yeah,
Like, I'm going to have to. Yeah. And it was genuinely, the only reason why I didn't delete the app was because I started to come across more informative content, and one of them being yourself. And then, as you said, the algorithm started to change what I was seeing on my For You page. So it went from kind of, I mean this with the best possible respect to anybody that's put videos out there. It went of little value to me. It didn't bring anything to my daily like learning, or it just was just an escape, like you say, to a place where it was informative. It was interesting. It got me excited about the possibility of learning, and you know, just picking people's brains and seeing that over that time frame. The reason why I started this podcast as well was because I started to notice that people were being more open about their mental health, and we're starting talking about issues. And it wasn't just, you know, people were like, we need to do more about depression and anxiety. It was people were talking about real stuff on their social medias. And I think it's amazing that people such as yourself, as a practitioner and as someone that is involved in education of mental health, is also open and honest about their own struggles. Because I think we all have this kind of, I don't know whether it's the ego within us that thinks, you know, it's just us, you know, it's just me. No one else is going through the same shit as me, or, you know, I've got it worse, or I don't know what it is. But when you look through the lens of either social media or other people, everyone seems to have their stuff together.
Yeah, that's it. And, you know, I was just saying to a client this morning, a lot of the time we create our own suffering. And this is why social media can be destructive, because we're scrolling, it's so easy to forget that it is a highlight reel. I see everyone else has it all together. They know what they're doing. They know exactly how to navigate their lives, and everything's perfect for them. It must only be me. And because mental health, you know, the depression, anxiety, these were all taboo topics not long ago. And now speaking about it, I thought, listen, if I speak about it and it encourages one person to just reach out for help, or say to someone, you know, I'm not doing so well, then I've done my job.
Yeah. And I think it has done that. I think, like I said, over the last 6 months, even 12 months since the pandemic, I think there's been a much more open discussion about it. And I don't know whether that's just because of the timing. You know, we were all forced into an environment that was very, very peculiar. We were essentially on house arrest. The whole planet was.
What can you do when you all you have to think about are your thoughts and yourself?
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about CBT. What is it? How does it help?
CBT, so in brief, in short, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, looks at the link between your cognitions, so the way that you think and your whole mental processing system, the link between that, your emotions and your behaviors. And, you know, sometimes we can get so caught up in our thought process that we have, everything sort of becomes a blur, and then we find ourselves doing things and we're like, why am I reacting in that way? Why did I just get really angry at that? Or like, why do I feel sad all of a sudden when that just happened? And we actually confuse ourselves, and we start sort of asking ourselves these questions, like who even am I? I don't know why I'm responding in this way. So what CBT does is it just separates all of these aspects of yourself out. And it's for me, I've been in therapy myself for like 13 years, and for me CBT is the most challenging, for sure, type of therapy. It's very real, and it's very raw, and it gets to the root of your suffering, really. And that's sort of when you realize that, oh, maybe it is me that has caused my suffering. But as well, that's an empowering thing to realize that, okay, if I've caused my own suffering to some extent, sometimes, then, and I've learned these behaviors as a, protective shield, then I can unlearn those things and learn something else that is more helpful for me going forward. So it's quite a confronting type of therapy. It's absolutely not easy, and at times it's not really pleasant. And I'll never say to people, yeah, it's just easy breezy. No, it's quite challenging, but at the same time, it's very healing. Once you learn to just come face to face with yourself, that shadow self of yours.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in therapy, a different style, internal family systems therapy, for 2 years now.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest thing, the funniest, well, not really funny, but in hindsight, it is funny for myself, is I thought I was so self-aware until I started therapy, because self-development and learning and everything had been such a big part of my life. Like I cope with stuff in my life through learning, through problem solving, and not really necessarily feeling the emotion, or even I guess I feel the emotion, but it was more a sense of, well, if I can't do anything about it, what's the point? So I never really had that moment where I was like, okay, I'm going to sit with this, I'm going to feel this and accept this. So like the logical side of my brain was just really, really overpowered and overdeveloped, but the emotional side of my brain was good when it came to what I would, I'll be careful with my language or terminology here. I'll air quote it for people listening. The good emotions, or what I deemed to be good previously to starting my own therapy journey, was they were fine. Like I was happy to feel those. Like I pursued those with the utmost veracity, and any of those bad emotions, nah, they just were just pushed aside. That was it. So if I felt anything bad, if I was stressed, if I was anxious, if I was sad or upset, I was like, okay, well, let's distract. I went every kind of meander around to get back to those good emotions, air quotes again, for anyone listening. So I think it's really cool. And I love the fact that there's actually lots of different styles of therapy. And I also find it fascinating how, as we've got further into civilization and into the more developed world and with technology and stuff, we've kind of lost the very beginnings of what we almost innately knew as a civilization, as human beings. Because if you look at like the Buddhist culture or Hindu or any really ancient religion, they'll talk about things like meditation, being present, and it fascinates me that we knew so much about our deep selves, our shadow selves back then, and we've completely stepped away from that.
Yep. And you mentioned something about the ego earlier, and I think this is what it is, to be honest. It's like a power struggle, an ego struggle in this world. We are all really playing a role in order to succeed in air quotes, in life. So we've created these identities for ourselves, and the way that we know we've created these identities is because we are different people. I think every single person in this world, pretty much, is a different person with different people. For example, when you're with, a kid, you'll be a different person. You'll play a role. You'll be like, okay, I need to be like this parental figure to this kid. So I'll speak in a different tone of voice. You'll speak differently to the CEO of a bank than you would to a parent or a sibling, for example. And then when you come home, you close the door and you're on your own. That is who you are. And this is what I'm saying. We create our own suffering, because what are we doing? Why are we exhausting ourselves so much to try and be something other than we are? When did we learn that we weren't good enough as we are? We had to be more. And when did we just start accepting other people's opinions of us as absolute truth?
Yeah, I love that. That's fascinating. Out of curiosity, when do you think, or what do you think the reasons are that kind of society has moved in that general direction, as opposed to being okay with ourselves and being able to provide the love that we need to ourselves?
I think social media has a big role to play in it. I think as well, we all have role models. We all have people that we look up to, that inspire us. And it can sometimes be that is like a seed that makes us think, maybe I'm not good enough because I'm not like this person. Maybe I should be more like this person. You then start comparing yourselves to other people, even at school. We don't learn this at school. You're taught at school essentially how to be a good employee in the world.
Yeah.
You're not really taught how to be an effective human being in the world. So you're not taught how to not compare yourself to other people, why it's important to be authentic, why it's important to speak your truth. There are like social things that are socially acceptable and things that aren't socially acceptable. And who is creating these rules? It's only a person that is creating those rules. It's only another human being. We are all just human beings. And, it can be so freeing to learn that actually you don't need to be this other person that is exhausting ultimately.
Yeah. And there's also massive generational differences.
Oh, yeah.
Like I can talk to my parents or grandparents, and obviously their views, opinions on life are very, very different. Like I almost felt trapped to it, actually, as I'm sure a lot of people still do and will continue to do, is when we're at school, we're taught, okay, go to college, go to uni, get a good job, buy a house, get a mortgage, get married. And none of those things are wrong necessarily if that's what you want. But also, if you don't fit within that framework, there's an issue there.
Yeah.
And it was funny, actually, because at the time when I was 18, I was about to go off to uni. I've always been quite good academically, but when I got to A level, I just stopped. I just didn't do anything. I stopped revising. I stopped putting effort in. And at the time, I didn't logically understand why. I was just like, I just don't, like, subconsciously, I just didn't want it at all. So I guess I was just sabotaging at that time without realizing. And at the same time, I also was escaping to my Xbox. That's all I used to do back then. I was bored. I was definitely addicted. I was going to say borderline addicted, but I was definitely addicted to playing my Xbox for hours and hours a day. And straight away after that, like, I remember my whole family were like, well, what are you going to do now? You need to get a job. You need to get out into the world and get yourself a trade, Dan, go be a plumber or a laborer or something. You will be set for life. And I just remember thinking then, I was like, that's also not what I want. Like I don't know what I want, but I don't necessarily want that.
Exactly.
So I think it's very, very different when, and I think a lot of these expectations and rules, I think social media has made a massive impact and propelled a lot of those ideas and ideologies forward into our view a lot more. But I also think we've got such a generational difference, and we're still kind of living with the expectations of the previous generation. But our society is moving so much quicker now, and there's a lot more possibilities, because with as bad as social media can be, it also can be incredible. Like this podcast, for example, I set it up a year ago. There's 18 different countries listening to this at the moment.
That's amazing.
I know,
Yeah.
literally. And
Yeah.
I just think that I don't want to be one of those guys that just says like you can do anything, because I know that's not true. But there's so much more possibility now than there ever has been with social media, with the internet, with how connectable and accessible everyone is. And we can use it for whatever we choose to.
Yeah. Yeah. We can use, there are two sides to social media. There is obviously the side that is quite toxic.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is also the side that actually can help you step into your own power.
Mm-hmm.
Every week I will go through my Instagram or TikTok and unfollow people who are, for whatever reason, either like irritating me, or I'm just not getting anything from their content.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, it's so easy to fall in a rabbit hole, and none of us need it. None of us need to be doing that. If you're going to spend time on social media, make it productive. If you're going to spend time scrolling on your phone, make it productive. Let it propel you forward into action, into stepping into your own power, and stepping out of any unhelpful beliefs that you might have about yourself, or any rules that you have about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're scrolling thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. And by scrolling, you're looking at all of these people's perfect lives, seemingly perfect lives. That's only going to reinforce the belief that you're not good enough, which isn't true.
So you said something really interesting earlier, and I want to come back to it about not thinking we're enough for ourselves. And I completely agree. One of my first therapy sessions, my therapist asked me, what do you do to, one, relax, and what do you do for self-love? And I just genuinely looked at her so blank faced, and I was like, so yeah, what can people do? Let's talk about details.
Okay, in terms of self-love,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure I'm actually even a big fan of the word self-love, because self-love can sometimes turn into self-obsession.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of the time, like especially Insta therapy, can encourage a bit of self-obsession. But
Mm-hmm.
self-love, I think, is really just about noticing your self-talk, noticing the way that you speak to yourself. If every time you make a mistake, how are you responding to yourself? Are you responding to yourself as if you were a loving parent, as if you were your best friend? Or are you responding to yourself like someone you absolutely hate? And if you're saying to yourself, oh my God, you're such an idiot. Why did you do that? I was so guilty of this beforehand. You're such an idiot. You're so stupid. How is that going to play a role in my life? That's going to shape so many beliefs that I have about myself. What about if I just treat myself with a bit more compassion?
Mm-hmm.
What about if and it's not about looking at myself in the mirror every day and being like, you are amazing, you're lovable, you're good enough, you're worthy. It's not necessarily about that. Learning that you are worthy is about the small steps that you take towards becoming someone who believes that they are worthy and good enough, and not a failure, or not anything that they believed that they were in the past. And that is sometimes a process of kind of reparenting yourself and building your own strength within yourself without having these protective walls up and having your guard up all the time. It's learning to become less defensive and more responsive, more attentive to everything, and about presence as well.
Yeah, it's something that I've very definitely struggled with myself as well. If I spoke to my friends the way I speak to myself, I would have none. And it is difficult, you know. You do have to check yourself, and it's something that's really helped me with that is meditation, because otherwise I don't know what it is. I think because I've always been very passionate about work, and I'm very competitive, unhealthily so. Not with others necessarily, but more for myself. Like, I want to make sure that I'm doing better than I was before, or I'm doing more, or I'm achieving more. So my brain constantly is like churning away. And it's funny really, because I really have to focus on what I'm saying or listening into a conversation, which I've had to develop and I've learned through therapy. Otherwise, my brain is firing off on tangents left, right, and center about ideas, and I want to hold on to each and every one of them, because I don't want to lose that, because that could be gold. It could help me. It could get me to that next level, and it's something that meditation and just being present is such a skill set that I've had to try and learn, because otherwise I have to be okay now with any of those tangents, just letting them go and trusting that if it's important, it will come back and I will remember it and it will go. So what I wanted to ask you is, I know that I've seen some of your content about breath work, meditation. What's your views on meditation, and how could people implement that into their life?
Oh, meditation is honestly been a lifesaver for me as well. I do a lot of transcendental meditation, which is a bit more complex, and it sounds a lot more confusing than it is, and it can sometimes put people off. Meditation is, the reason it's so brilliant is because we don't realize that we spend either so much time in the past or so much time in the future, which is what creates feelings of fear. If we're thinking about the past, you know, oh, that happened in the past, so I don't want to move forward onto something else because I don't want to repeat the past. And when we're thinking about the future, we're creating this sense of worry, both of which are actually sometimes helpful if they propel us forward into action. But if they're keeping us stuck, they're super unhelpful. And so what meditation does is it allows you to access the peace, the sense of peace that is already within you. In fact, with 99% of my clients, if not 100% of my clients, when I ask them what their goal is, they say, I just want peace. I just want to be peaceful. And we don't realize that it's quite simply there. It's within you. And sometimes all it takes is for you to access that subconscious part of your brain that is free from cognition, that is free from thought, that's free from judgment and critical thinking of ourselves. And just become very aware of what is going on. Let go of the attachment to outcome. Let go of our expectations of ourselves, and just allow and accept what is. And rather than having these goals of I've got to always be happy, I've got to strive towards something, let's just accept what is. Like, how about we do that? And then it's funny, because when you say that to people, if you're like, okay, how about we just accept what is happening right now? Are you stressed right now in this moment? looking at me, and then like, no, I'm no. And then I'm like, okay, now take a sort of bystander perspective. Imagine you're standing outside of your body and observing yourself and observing your thoughts. How are you feeling from this perspective, from this different perspective? And every time, without fail, a client will say, I'm pretty peaceful. And I'm now realizing that actually what I was worried about has no weight. There's no need for me to worry. I have so much more clarity in this space. And that's what meditation is. It's not about being free from your thoughts, because it's not possible, but it's just about focusing on your breath to allow space for fear and worry to come and go, to just pass, rather than meeting it with resistance and fighting it and trying to get rid of it. Just accepting it, and it will pass.
Yeah, I love that. And when I have like, I know you're not supposed to judge meditation as well, because that kind of defeats the whole point of it. But when I have a particularly busy week, over the last couple of months, it's been incredible, because when I have set aside time for meditation, my brain goes from overactive, firing off in every kind of direction on anything. It could be anything. It doesn't necessarily have to be anxiety or anything of that ilk. It could just be work, or I've got to go do that, whatever. And I get this like tingling sensation. Have you ever had a head massage?
Yeah.
You know, that sort of when you're so deeply relaxed, I get this tingling sensation right at like the crown of my head. And it's just the best feeling ever. And I only feel that relaxed or that quiet internally when I either like meditate or do yoga. That's the only time.
That's really interesting that you notice that sort of sensation in your body, because again, with CBT, if we're looking at sort of the CBT model, I encourage everyone to look at how your thoughts and your emotions are affecting your body, your response. Where are you feeling it in your body, and how are you feeling in your body? So when you have that tingling feeling, then what is that telling you? Like, what is the message that is telling you?
Well, for me, I take that as, Dan, you need to be more relaxed. You need to do this and be present more often.
Yeah.
So
what benefit does it have to you personally, being present? Like, what does it give you access to? I love having a therapy session here. What does it give you access to, though?
Absolutely everything. Like, I just feel so much more able to work efficiently, or just be present and notice things. You know, like I love hiking. I love going on walks with my dog, and there's a very definite difference between me being present and walking, and me kind of walking, not really taking in the sights, thinking about deadlines, work, or, you know, stress or anxiety or anything. And one of the best things I ever did was I did a hike up a mountain, and at the top of the mountain, I did a meditation. And I cannot tell you, it was like a 20-minute, I did a guided one. And I thought I was chilled and relaxed and enjoying the views and, you know, whatever. And then when I came round from that meditation afterwards, it was, without sounding too like hippie, it was like a whole new environment. You know, like the filter of stress and everything had just lifted. And I really started to appreciate the beauty of the sun was setting as well at the same sort of time. My dog, she was just lay around me, just cuddled into me. And I just was so much more grateful and noticing everything, you know, the people having a little conversation, having laughter, and it was beautiful.
That's amazing, actually. And also so important, because the quality of your thoughts has a direct impact on how you feel. And that is such a perfect example. of
Mm,
that is such a perfect example. Like I describe it as decluttering your
mm,
mind.
mhm,
Sometimes we don't realize the clutter that is going on in our mind. And once we make space in
mm,
our mind, we can just appreciate what is going on, in front of us. And it's not always the case. Like it's not, because we don't want to fall into the territory of like toxic positivity and like everything's great all the time. And like you always have to accept things. Like sometimes you're going to meet some things with resistance. Sometimes you are going to feel really stressed, and like you don't need to push that away and just accept things for what for what they are. If you're feeling like, if you're going through a time of serious distress,
mhm,
um but what I'm really talking about, I think the point we're trying to make is when you are creating your own suffering and you know it and it's going on in your head,
mhm,
um that's the time to be like, okay, I need to just like get a bit real with myself, become a bit more present and grounded in
mhm,
what is going on. Am I creating my own suffering? Is there any like validity
mhm,
to these upsetting and distressing thoughts that I'm having?
mhm.
Um, and it's not about just saying everything's fine when you're going through a time of distress.
Mm. You mentioned something there that I want to unpack a little bit more as well. And it's something that personally I've suffered with, is that toxic positivity. There's such a huge space, a sector of social media that I think I I think at the very heart of it, it means well, but it misses that massive emotional side of thinking and acceptance that, do more, like, be productive. And, the motivational sort of space I'm talking about now is, I think, very toxically positive. And I think if you're looking at entrepreneurs or businessmen, I think that falls into that realm without necessarily meaning to. And I think people, because it's social media, only take that snippet of that. I mean, I definitely did anyway. So I'll just say it from my own experience. As I kind of got into more business and got into the social media realm, I very definitely thought, well, these guys are working crazy hours and they're doing this and they're doing that, and they don't have time to be thinking negatively. That was air quotes for anyone listening. They don't have time for that. So I don't have time for that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they sort of miss out everything in between. You are listening to like 20 minutes of their life, or even like 1 minute of their life, and you're like, this is what it's like for them all the
Mhm,
time. Got to always be positive. The goal is happiness. And I think that is, I think, the intention for anyone
mhm,
who ends up being quite toxic in their positivity. They're like, oh, I just want you to be happy. Just be happy. Why? Because it makes life easier for them, because
mhm,
they maybe don't have the capacity to deal with your difficult emotions, which is fine.
mhm,
And if someone doesn't have the capacity, it's then about communicating that,
mhm,
rather than trying to fix someone's problems, trying to solve it, trying to jump in. I mean, family my family members, I love them, bless them, but some of them I really could turn around to them and say, why do I have to be happy all the time? I don't understand. When
mhm.
they're like, oh, don't be sad. It's why not?
Yeah.
Why is that problematic?
Mm. I
And
think.
sorry, one more thing. Yeah, and the reason why it's so detrimental is because it can actually lead someone to feeling a lot more alone and really unsupported in
Mhm,
those moments. And that's the thing that people don't realize, because likely someone being on the receiving end of toxic positivity is not going to say to someone in that moment, that's actually made me feel so much worse.
mhm. Yeah. And I think that's such a huge thing. It was a massive learning curve for me because I was so guilty of chasing positivity and happiness and all of the kind of positive emotions that I would have previously described as positive. But I think the biggest learning curve for me was not that I necessarily shouldn't be doing that, but it was just that all emotions are valid
Yeah.
and they all bring something to the table. And I think the pursuit of any one of them, like if we flip the chart and someone was said to me or you or anyone, I want to chase anger, or I want to chase anxiety or jealousy or anything, any one emotion, most people would say, well, that doesn't really sound like something that you should be doing. But yet we have this kind of, as you say, like if it's familial or friends, or it comes from a good place. But when someone says that, it just makes us all think, well, okay, so we should be chasing happiness all the time.
Mm-hmm. I like this word should, because I will always I've encouraged myself to remove it from my vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Should, shouldn't. Who was setting these rules?
Mm-hmm.
Why should we be doing any one thing, or why shouldn't we be doing any one? We're all so completely different and individual and autonomous that why should we all be achieving and aiming for the same thing?
Mm-hmm.
And why does it have to be happiness? Because happiness makes everyone else's life easier. But happiness, like at the expense of our own authenticity, so we're compromising our own sort of integrity and authenticity in order to just be happy. And then we end up shoving down all the other stuff, which eventually comes to a head.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I think it's something, how do we change that?
We change what?
How do we change the general kind of consensus that everybody starts to feel like I'll use that word that you don't like, feel like they should be pursuing happiness? Because in situations where people are struggling, I'll be honest, I've even found myself thinking, I'm a problem solver. So I'm like, how do I make this person feel better? Or how do I help them to feel better? So what can we do as individuals if we're almost in a support, or if we're in that situation, to not feel like we have to do that?
To not feel like we have to fix something for someone else. It's so hard because I think it's in our nature. We want to solve problems. We want to fix things for people. We want to immediately jump in if it's someone we care about and make it better for them. But the subconscious message we're giving to someone when we're doing that is, if we just step in and jump in and try to fix it, we're sending the message to them that something's not right. Something's not right here. And it can be really destructive for someone who feels fundamentally like there is something wrong with them, or they're, in quotation marks, broken in any way. And so when we're supporting someone, 9 times out of 10, we must remember that people don't want advice. They just want someone to listen to them. They want someone who feels safe. They want someone who they can speak about their feelings with and know that that is going to be met with a complete, non-judgment and just a calming presence, because generally we have the answers. We have the answers within ourselves. We just need a space to be able to figure that out for ourselves. When we give advice, we're giving advice based on what we would do in their situation, because you can never fully put yourself in someone else's shoes. Even if you have all the empathy in the world, you can't physically put yourself in someone else's life experience. So sometimes even ask, it's about very open communication and supporting someone and saying, instead of just giving unsolicited advice, would you like my opinion, or would you like me to just listen? How can I best support you right now? What do you need from me? These are open questions that make someone feel cared about, supported, and listened to. And generally, asking people questions like, tell me more about your situation, or what do you think you're going to do, or like, what are your options? So simple, and shows how much you care about someone. The person immediately thinks, okay, I know this person is listening. I know they care about me. I feel supported. And just being there with another person, not trying to do anything, is actually so much more beneficial than jumping in and being like, okay, here's what I would do. You should do this. You should try this, have a cup of tea, go for a walk. That's not what they need.
Yeah. And it feels so invalidating as well, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
like telling a depressed person to just go and, have you tried not being depressed?
Exactly.
Yeah, obviously I have. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Didn't know about that. Yeah.
Thank you. And I completely agree. I went last week, I went to a group of men. The group was called the Men Make Ready Men, and it was a circle outside in like the forest around a fire. And it started off with like a meditation, and then it was all about like we did a group talk and presentation about learning about healthy masculinity. And then there was another section where we all got to share. It wasn't necessarily about anything. It could have been about whatever you wanted. But it was about a space where you could just share without judgment, without advice, and just sharing. And it was so incredible. Like the ambience, the experience was incredible, because like you say, it's so easy for us to try and want to fix other people's problems, or have you tried this? But just being able to share something just instantly makes you feel better. Not better, but it does make the pressure of that certain situation feel a little bit alleviated when you know that people are listening, taking on board, and they care.
It does, yeah, it completely, and it does make it easier, because it starts challenging. If there is a belief there, for example, I've learned over time that every time I share something, someone's going to come back with advice that I have not asked for. If you've learned that over time, then what that's going to do is eventually make you shut down, and you will stop speaking to people. So sometimes relearning things and learning new things. Okay, now I have a space to share. So am I still believing that it's not safe to open up to people, or am I learning that actually there are some people in the world who I can just share with, and who aren't gonna come back at me with all this advice?
Yeah. No, I love that. I saw the other day a great post that you did about journaling, and I really want to pick your brain on journaling, because it's something that I'll be honest, my first kind of thought when I heard about it a couple of years ago, before I actually started therapy, was, it's a diary, like it's an entry, like I don't, I'm not interested in that at all. But it's been such a valuable tool for me. So I'd love to hear your opinion on it, and then how people can implement that into their lives.
Journaling is one of my favorite activities, because like you, my mind is extremely active, and I really can't keep control of all of the thoughts that are going on in my head, because it's working at a million miles a minute. What journaling does is it helps me get everything onto paper, and generally it will like veer off into a random direction, and I'll start writing about things that, like really deep rooted things and beliefs. And then when I read this diary entry back, or my journal back, you can find the most key pieces of information. They're like, it's like a hidden gem that you'll find in your journal, and be like, that makes sense. That makes sense. That makes sense. That links to this, and it links to this. And it's all about really connecting the dots when you separate your thoughts out, get it all down, get it off your chest, is even just getting it off your chest is the most healing experience.
Yeah, I love that. I actually was I was cleaning out my room the other day, and I came across some of my old journals from when I first started. And it's fascinating to see the mindset shift, the things that I was focusing on, and the way that I've journaled was different. Like, it was very factual, it was very logical, because obviously that's how my brain was functioning at the time. But now it's a lot more, there's a lot more balance. I'm still working on the emotional side of things too, but there's the here's the logic, and then this is how it makes me feel, and then kind of explore that a little bit in detail. Whereas when I first started, it was like little bullet points of this, and this. And it was really cool to kind of look back on it. So I think I'm glad to hear that obviously you look back on them as well and reread them, and it is very interesting.
Yeah, and you know what, I love that as well, talking about how you used to be compared to how you are now, or how your entries are now, because I always say the only person you ever need to compare yourself to is the person you were either like last year or last week. And look at how it can be so heartwarming to see how far you have come and how far you've developed as a person, as a human being.
Mhm. So the one thing that I was, when I first started doing it, I was a little bit confused about how to journal. So
Okay.
what can we give people so that they can take away today to kind of have like a template of, this is kind of what we could be doing?
Okay. In terms of journaling, there are two approaches you can take. There's one which is a very sort of ET approach. It's a very like logical, straightforward approach. And at the end of every day, as sort of a reflection exercise, this might be the one you saw, like checking in with yourself every day, asking yourself things like, how helpful has my thinking been today? So using prompts, say, how helpful has my thinking been today? Number one. How helpful has my behavior been today? Number two. How would I rate my mood on a scale of 1 to 10 today? And what might I like to do differently tomorrow? So what's an intention I can set for tomorrow, or a goal, personal goal that I can set for myself tomorrow? So you could take, that's one approach to take. And there's another approach, and it's an exercise called the morning pages, which I learned a while ago. And first thing you do when you wake up in the morning, you have your pen and your notebook next to you. As soon as your alarm goes off, before you check your phone, before anything else, as your eyes are opening, you grab the journal and the pen, turn on the light, set your timer on your phone for 3 minutes, and you just write for 3 minutes, as much as you can. And there's no method, there's no formula. You simply write. If you don't know what to write, you start by writing, I don't know what to write. And you keep writing, I don't know what to write, until something comes out. And I guarantee by the end of the exercise, you will have come to some kind of discovery somewhere about something, and emotions will absolutely come up for you. Remember when I first did it, for a while, I used to get so angry when I was doing this exercise, and I was like, where is all this anger coming from? And it's a wonderful, soothing sort of release to let go of this anger, waking up with this anger and then immediately releasing it into the world, so that you can clear space and make room for more helpful emotions and other things throughout the day. And it's a brilliant way to start your day.
I love that. I know that I think I would also feel angry because I hate not being good at things.
Yes.
So I'd be like, I don't know what to write. And then I'd be like, come on, like start. And then I can see now with just, even with the way that I journal, I do the kind of it's normally at the end of the day, if I'm honest, because it'll be what's happened through the day, like how that's affected me, that sort of stuff. I love the idea of doing the 3 minutes. So I'm probably going to try that out and see.
Oh yeah, please do, and let me know how it goes.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna. Amy, is there anything that we haven't discussed today that you would like to share?
That's a good question. I think we've covered quite a variety of topics,
Yeah.
a solid variety of topics. I hope it will be useful for people listening.
Mhm. Oh, no doubt it will be. I could speak to you all day. I'm very aware of the time. So thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. And it has been the most interesting conversation for me. I could talk about mental health, psychology, and all that sort of stuff for a long, long time. But yeah, so I'd love to have you back on. We can do a deep dive on something a bit more complex.
I would love to.
Yeah. Well, thank you anyway. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Dan.
Thank you.